I think that women rely a little less heavily on appearance. So, if we had to put like a percentage on it, I think that it might be like 60% important.
Okay.
And then there's other things that are kind of spread out as far as what is left over
I agree with
in
that.
importance. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to appearance, there's a lot of unsureness. So there's a huge maybe category. Mm-hmm. So a woman can look at you, you're either going to be a no to her, and there's really nothing that you can do if you're in that no category in appearance. And then there's a really large maybe category. And those are the guys that can do something. He can show those other aspects. Mm-hmm. And if he happens to hit those benchmarks and those other boxes that she's looking for that are highly important to her, then he's probably going to end up a yes. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the yes category.
Yes.
And she looks at a guy and she's like, yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. I would argue that yes category of men can still mess it up down the line. Mm-hmm. If he is lacking too much in any of the other boxes. Mm-hmm. Hey guys, welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today we're talking about how men decide they want to date a woman versus how women decide they want to date a man. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So Todd, we were talking about this topic and we saw some differences between what we were both saying as to what we look for and what we think typically our gender looks for when looking at a potential partner. So can you break down your thoughts, at least from a male perspective?
I think we should really try to break those down to two categories, which is SMV, which I think is still relevant, and then RMV, which stands for relationship mating value. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be different criteria for that from a guy's perspective. So a long time ago, a friend of mine and I were talking about, kind of a rating system. And I mean, I think this was 2001. This is like way pre-manosphere.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a long
Before
time
any
ago.
of this was really out there.
Yeah. He had just gotten divorced and we were just talking about all these issues. And we were like, we were 31 years old. So, but I still think it holds up to this day. And it's just pretty simplistic. But I think it does the job. Mm-hmm. So first of all, we have two categories, right? The SMV and the RMV. And so from a guy's perspective, that's going to look very different because to me, an SMV is going to be something which is either going to be involved in hookup culture or short-term relationships where you know that there's really no long-term potential.
Okay.
And RMV would be someone that you meet and you say to yourself, after they get through all these kind of hurdles, this is somebody I'd want to be in a monogamous relationship with because of what they bring to the table and how they would enhance, your life. And so the first step is kind of, instead of breaking down categories in a 1 to 10, I just never liked that. I thought it was too ambiguous. Mm-hmm. So I thought about my psychology background and typically in just schooling and how hotels are rated and, all these different things. And I thought, okay, like the most, kind of generalized way to rate someone would be between a 1 and a 5 scale. Mm-hmm. I think it fits the perfect bell curve where 3 would be average, 4 above average, 5 excellent, 2 below average, 1 poor. Mm-hmm. And so, you've taken a lot of exams, right? And it's
like the AP exams too.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is that any guy's going to look at is a woman's looks.
Yeah.
And so whether it's SMV or RMV. So they're going to say, okay, like, does she pass or fail? Mm-hmm. And typically for guys, I think this has changed over the years, but guys will go down a number. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you're 5, which would be a Chad, you would go down to a 4.
Okay, so in comparison to what he is, he would go down.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But a woman will not. She'll go across or above.
Do you think that's just been in like the last 20 plus years, or maybe even less than that men will go down in appearance?
I think men have always had more of a propensity to go down with SMV.
Okay.
Okay. So it's for hookups and things like that, especially if there's alcohol involved, that type of deal, then they'll do that. Where I think women have never really kind of done that. Now it's really bad.
Right.
So women will only do, most of the time, it's going to be across or above, which is basic hypergamy, even for hookup culture. Mm-hmm. The only caveat to that is beta boxing.
Right.
Or celebrities.
Because I think it's true that, women are seen as the gatekeepers.
Yes.
So it makes sense that because they're the gatekeepers and they have more options, that they're going to be a little bit more strict in their rating, that they're only going to look for across or above, especially in today's day and age.
Yeah, exactly. Because why wouldn't you?
Right.
If you have all these options, you're going to, be with the person you're most attracted to. And guys would do this if they could.
Right. And
but
I think
they can't.
the biggest thing is, they are successful in it. Like, that's the true test, is that once they've done it once, twice, 3 times, they know that they can continue. It really does just make sense. I don't blame anyone for doing that versus like men. Do you think that there's like a natural inclination to want to find somebody at their level or above, but then they just, in the real world, say they're like even 16, 17, 18, when you start dating, do they just have that real world experience and then they find that they're not successful, so they find what is successful, which is dating down or across?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think human nature is that men are hypergamous as well, meaning they're going to try to get the best thing that they can.
I think that too. It is just human.
Yes. It's just the difference is that men can't do that typically where women can. And so if a man realizes what his kind of true kind of worth on the dating market is, then he's going to try, I hate to say it like this, but kind of take what he can get. If we're transitioning to RMV, then it's a different story, because obviously a guy still wants to get as high as he can get looks-wise. But I think what ends up happening with RMV is SMV, it kind of stops at that. If she's got bad credit or her personality is dog shit, if there's all these different things that are going on, that really, unless she's somebody who like you're scared of, because she might stab you in the middle of the night, then it's something where they're going to.
Those things don't matter.
Yeah, those things don't
like
really.
The personality traits.
Not really.
So those don't get included in SMV.
In my definition of SMV, they're not included in that.
That's why the other category, RMV,
yes,
it does include the personality aspect.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
So going back to RMV, it's trying to get the person that you're attracted to. But as soon as that part, let's say you get that match or you get that date or whatever, then guys, ideally, if they want any chance of a long-term relationship working, will be looking at other factors and weighing them just as heavily. So those factors would be, what's her personality like? That's the biggest thing, I think, because I don't care, how much money she makes or what her social circle's like or how intelligent she is. If she's bitchy, I don't know how else to say it.
It's not worth the stress.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's a headache. And so
it's hard to be in a relationship with certain personality traits like that.
Exactly. And the biggest thing that I hear all the time from women is that the narcissist, right?
Right.
But I see that from women a lot as well, which is not NPD, but it's just everything being about them.
Yeah, it's like selfishness.
Yes.
Which there is a lot of that out there.
Yes.
But I think it does. You're right. It just gets like brushed with a broad stroke of narcissism.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that there's a lot of people out there, especially women who are really attractive, who are used to getting certain treatment, that then everything becomes about them. And how you can tell that is if they ask any questions about you. That's huge. If a woman asks a question to me, like, I automatically know there's some level of interest there.
Yes.
But if it's just all about her,
yeah,
then, that's a huge red flag.
you can tell that very early on. I mean, you can find that out
In
when you're still
texting.
texting.
Yeah.
Before you're even meeting in person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say that, you can get the gist of that on texting, but you really need to spend some time with somebody to realize that. And then the other things that are important, and I think for men, they're all kind of equal as far as, is she intelligent? Now, a lot of guys might argue with me that that's not that important, but as a person who I consider myself above average in intelligence, I need somebody that I can connect to on that level, that I can have deep, meaningful conversations with, because I'm not a superficial conversation type of person. And so I've met a lot of women, for example, and there's a lot of guys like this too, that's where they live.
Right.
They just talk about superficial stuff all the time and small talk. And for me personally, and I think a lot of guys out there also probably feel this way, they want to be able to have, in-depth, interesting conversations. Kind of like you and I have, but we're just happen to be on the air.
Yeah, it makes sense, that there's going to be some variability based on who you are as a person. I mean, I could see
Yes.
that even with the personality part of it, because there's some men that, the book, Men Love Bitches?
No, I don't.
No, I think it's more of a book for women
Okay.
to justify them acting a certain way.
Okay.
I've only read like bits and pieces of it, so I can't speak to the entire book. But I think the gist of it is that some men really like the very straightforward woman. So she might get labeled as a biatch, but she's not like doing it very aggressively in a mean way. I mean the type that's just very forward in her thoughts. So she's not the type that's, like sitting back, read my mind, man, and then you gotta, figure it out yourself, and you better pick right or else I won't be happy, but I'll be just giving you the silent treatment.
Yeah.
So that's like another subcategory of personality that he might appreciate. Or for people that are like super dry and sarcastic.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
that seek that. I could see how that's a different personality trait
Yes.
than, like, I wouldn't like somebody super sarcastic. So it's knowing about yourself, and then you're going to rate somebody a little bit differently based on
where you
your
come
preferences.
from. Yeah, absolutely. Because I know, for example, a lot of guys that are just like superficial about everything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And for me, it's a very dry conversation. If you're talking about like the quickest route to get to work, and they're breaking that down, or what projects they're working on in their house.
Yeah.
It's so like maybe for a guy like that, having a more superficial personality and a partner would be ideal. But I think it's still that rating system. So for me, it's got to be somebody, and this is challenging, that is going to be feminine but strong, and also somebody who has the ability to kind of have those in-depth conversations, but at the same time isn't disagreeable. If that makes sense. Like,
that does. And I could see how that's a very difficult combination, because typically I would think a woman that's very intelligent is probably motivated, is probably higher up in the career field, and might be more of that like masculine personality, and not as soft.
Yes. And when I say disagreeable, what I mean is, there's just some people that are contrarians, and that's just kind of how they operate. And for me, it's having somebody, and I think a lot of guys can probably identify with this, that when I say strong, means they have a good sense of who they are. They have a good sense of their belief system and their value systems. And if they have a differing opinion, they will offer it up. But it's the method in which you offer it up. It's saying, I disagree, and this is why, and that respect is still there versus making it personal or, you know what I mean?
Or trying to control and trying to change
Yes,
your opinion
exactly.
because it's different than hers.
Yeah, because the reality is that I don't care how compatible you think you are, there's always going to be parts of your relationship that you disagree, but it's how you handle that separates healthy relationships from unhealthy relationships.
I can totally see that.
You know, so for example, you know, with you and I on this podcast, we've never really gone there before, but you know, I know that you're very religious and I'm an atheist. And so it's something that we've never really had a reason to, you know, go back and forth about that. But I know, because I know you, that if we did have that conversation, you would listen to my point of view and I would listen to yours.
Yes.
And it would be in a respectful manner. Do you know what I mean? And it wouldn't threaten our friendship at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Versus somebody that, I don't know, I picture them as a little bit more immature, you know, when they can't hear somebody else's opinion and just respect it. And instead they're defensive and then they try to change that person's mind.
Yes. They always have to be right.
Yes.
That type of thing. And that's a personality trait that is a big turnoff. You know, or someone who is very masculine and, you know, kind of wants to I hate that saying, take the lead, but essentially, you know, kind of, I don't know how else to say this without sounding bad, but like wears the pants in the relationship or whatever. It's like I think that a lot of guys won't want that. I think I think most guys, honestly, what they really would like is equality.
Right. That's the thing I was going to say is it's not necessarily that they want to wear the pants like
so
20 or 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They just want to be respected and not be controlled in their opinions.
Yes, exactly. And that when you're in a partnership, you're making decisions that impact both of you, but you're working as a team in order to get that accomplished.
Yeah.
And so to me, and I've said this on this podcast before, like, I don't want someone who's going to be extremely introverted and just say whatever you want. Like, that's not attractive to me. That's just as unattractive, honestly, as somebody who's saying, we're doing this at this time and you're going to like it. So it's finding someone in the middle.
Yeah. It's boring if they just go along with everything.
Yeah, it is. It really gets boring. And then you end up losing respect.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that that's how a lot of toxic traits and unhealthy relationships begin. Because, you know, I can give you an example. When I was younger, I was with a woman who was very much that way. Like, everything I brought up, she would say, that's fine, whatever. And what ends up happening over time, and this isn't even a conscious thought, is that you just stop asking. Oh. Because you know that she's going to go along with whatever it is. So you say, we're going to this movie, we're going to this restaurant, and then it ends up feeling like you're a controller.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you just don't want to get that same answer again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just a waste of time and energy just to even ask anymore when you know what the answer is going to be.
And then when you break up, you get labeled as that.
Oh, no.
Do you know what I mean?
The controlling guy.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Well, I mean, it really doesn't matter because you're never going to see this person again or her friendship group. But I bet that there was probably some talk of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So it sounds a lot like emotional intelligence then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is high on the list.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think it also has to do with how introverted and how extroverted you are. That's a personality trait. So for me, I'm a natural introvert. I think I can be extroverted, but where I find my peace and solace is in quieter spaces. And I know people that are extroverts that they just are re-energized by being with people. So if you're with somebody who is super extroverted and you're super introverted, that's going to be problematic.
I wondered what your thoughts were on that, because a lot of people talk about how it balances them having an extrovert, you know, if they're introverted. But I could see how it's problematic.
Yeah. So here's what I was referring to, though, specifically, is that if you're a 1 on the introverted scale, meaning you're extremely introverted, and she's a 5 on the extroverted scale, that's too far apart. Ideally, what you'd want is 1 degree of separation. So it would be compatible. Because if I'm with somebody and they want, to travel somewhere or to go to a certain experience that may have a lot of people, that person helps me get out of my comfort zone, and I'm able to say, okay, you know what, there's some things we can do that are more low key.
Yeah.
That resonate with her. So it's having that combination of it being different, but not too different.
Yeah, it doesn't take you too far out of your comfort zone for
Yes.
too long of a time period, too.
Exactly.
Because I could see that if a woman was more introverted and a 1 on that scale, like she just wants to be home literally
she's
every
a
night.
homebody. Yeah, she's a homebody.
And if he's a 5 on the extroverted scale, he just wants to be out every single night.
Exactly. How's that going to work?
It's not.
Yeah. So it's something where that's where I think having that 1 degree of separation, either or, is a good mix. Or, some people are kind of a hybrid of both. So they're that 3. And those people would work out fine as well.
Yeah.
But I think these are all things that when you're getting to know the talking stage, that's things that are important to understand about the person.
You really have to go into dating knowing yourself. And most people, when they go into dating, when they're in their late teens or early 20s, like you definitely don't know yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of these things that men are kind of looking at as they are looking at a woman and the way that you're speaking, do you think it really takes some time? Like, do you think that most men, it's not until their 30s before they really get this down?
That's a good question. I would say it's case by case. I know some people in their early 20s that have this down, and I know people in their 50s that don't. So, but generally speaking, I would say that most of the time it's probably late 20s, early 30s for guys.
Yeah, and I feel like you have to have been through experiences, and that's where you learn, right? Because I think that the tendency, and tell me if you disagree, but the tendency, especially for young guys, is that the appearance is like 90% of it. And they will let that overshadow a lot of the other stuff.
Yes.
Like even if they don't like a woman's personality, they might just kind of hang in there because she's hot. And she might be like the hottest girl that he's ever been with.
Yes.
And he doesn't want to let that go until it turns toxic, potentially. And then, it's a tough lesson to learn. And then he ranks it a little bit less. It's still, I agree, it's still going to be primary for a guy, no matter what. I mean, I think it's natural. You have to be attracted to the person that you're looking at dating potentially.
But it's for guys, it's just a pass-fail.
So say a man is pretty self-aware and he's looking at a woman and she's a pass for appearance. Do you think that he is looking back at the appearance thing? Like even if he runs into something personality-wise that he's not sure of, like does he look back at the appearance and say, oh, but she's a 5 out of 5? And does he let some of the other things slip because she's a 5 out of 5 compared to a woman that's a 4 out of 5?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's in this day and age, it would be really difficult to even get a 5 out of 5
Right.
unless you're a 5 out of 5 guy.
Right.
But let's just, hypothetically speak, say it is a 5 out of 5 guy and he meets a 5 out of 5 woman. He's going to look at that dynamic the same way 2 3s would. Because he would have an abundance of women. Do you know what I mean? The problem is that a guy sees himself as a 3, but a woman will see herself as a 4. And so she'll look at 3s as settling when they're actually her match, at least in looks.
Right. I do think that happens. So, yeah, same example, but just lower it down a notch. What about if, she's really a 4 out of 5 compared to a 3 out of 5? Like, is he letting some things slip a little bit more for that 4 out of 5 girl?
I think it depends on the guy.
Yeah.
On what you value. Because I think that I think it's a mistake, though. I think it's a big mistake Because what's going to happen is that I don't care how hot she is, she's not going to stay that way forever.
No, it's going to change eventually.
Exactly. And what's going to be left over
Yeah.
is the other things. And so I think that it's very important to pay attention to those things if you're going to try to be in a relationship with somebody. And I think the difficult thing right now is that guys are having to kind of go down in almost all areas if they want a relationship. But that's why I think so many guys are walking away.
So going back to the ranking, what other things do you think, other than the appearance, personality, intelligence, what other things then are men looking for?
I think the other thing is going to be value system. And so, we can talk a little bit about what that actually means. And I would say, for example, what your value system would be, do you want to have a family? Is that important to you? What do you value in life? And some people, they value, the traditional family structure, and other people value freedom and being able to travel, for example. Do you value hard work, or are you one of these people that want to just kind of get through it? They kind of do the bare minimum in order to kind of fulfill the requirements, if it's a job or a relationship or whatever. But I think if I met somebody and they were a hard worker, that says a lot about their personality as well. And that aligns with my value system as far as saying, okay, if I want to get something accomplished, I'm going to figure out a way to do that. And if that involves hard work, I'll do what's needed to be done.
Yeah, and I could see how there's a real combination of values that's important too. Because like if you're both wanting to have a family, but you're not both hard workers, like that's where challenges can develop, right? Like once you have babies and the other one's not, picking up the workload.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's something where if from a guy's point of view, if the woman, you could tell, like, is disorganized and doesn't do a good is flaky, all those different things. Is this really a woman you want to have a child with?
Right.
Because that's going to, when she becomes a mother, it's not, her personality isn't going to shift.
No.
And she's going to be a different person.
Yeah, don't make the mistake of thinking that's actually going to like completely change the value system.
You could see somebody who does the bare minimum in life to scrape by, and they can't handle a lot of distress tolerance.
Yeah. Then that's not good. That's not a good setup because they will be stressed to the max.
Exactly.
With forming a family.
And you can speak to that.
Yeah.
So you have to have that mindset that this is going to be hard. It's valuable and worth it for most people, but it's going to be hard, and it's going to entail hard work.
How about the value of staying healthy? Because I think that's where a lot of couples end up differing.
Definitely.
Because you can be like fairly healthy, at least from the outward appearance when you're young.
Yeah, of course. You can get away with it.
Yeah, you can get away with it, but then it sneaks up on you. If you had bad, unhealthy habits, like if you drink too much, you smoke, all of that, that's a value I think that needs to match. Because if she's, working out at the gym every day and he's never going, like, I don't know, where's that going to lead?
Yeah, not in a good place.
Probably her taking care of him from a pretty young age.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's important.
Well, and it's something that a lot of times people who are into health and fitness are also into that lifestyle, which isn't just going to the gym. A lot of times it's participating in different events and things like that. So ideally you'd want somebody who may not be as into it as you, but is in the same kind of orbit. Because if somebody is going to the gym all the time and somebody never goes, first of all, that will catch up with them, where you can ward off aging more and just be healthier in general if that's a part of your lifestyle. So that's huge. And it's the same thing with like partying, for example.
Yeah.
So if one person, this is not, I know I reference Chris Rock a lot, but I love the guy. He was making a joke about compatibility, and he was saying that somebody who uses crack and somebody who goes to church, like that's never going to work out.
It's not going to work.
But 2 crack users can stay together forever.
Yeah.
so,
It's true.
so that's kind of where the lifestyle piece comes in. And that's what guys should be assessing for.
And that's where I think like hobbies get pulled into it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about this entire list that we're going through and how a lot of people meet nowadays being on dating apps. I know we recommend against them.
Yeah.
But I feel like people can get a pretty good read, obviously on appearance, probably not as much on personality. It might be a little bit harder. Like you might get a little bit of cues, like as far as how somebody writes in their bio. And maybe from the photos, you could argue, you could tell a little bit about somebody's personality. Intelligence, I think, again, that might be a little bit difficult with personality, or just like personality. You might be able to tell by their education. That's usually in there.
Yeah.
But emotional intelligence, you're not going to be able to tell.
But that's where my recommendation would be, if you are on a dating app and you do a match with somebody, try to, when you're in the talking stage, try to link up with them on social media, because you can find there's so many tells. Like, I know this is, for the old crowd, but on Facebook, for example, like I can see so much pathology on there. Like the typical
when they
one
repost like political stuff or even post too personal of details. Are you saying
it's more the attention seeking.
Oh, okay.
So for example, I see this every once in a while. Will somebody say, "I woke up and I'm so sick today." ...
Oh.
And then,
just looking for sympathy.
Yeah, from these people that are essentially acquaintances at this point in your life. But there's a pattern of that, or just constantly showing about every night out you went, and versus it being like a special occasion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Like, that's an important reason to get their socials. And I think an important reason to meet them in person fairly early on. But I think that the other thing that people make a mistake of, because this is what I experienced back when I was on dating apps years ago, is that people would talk very quickly about hobbies and like just their daily routine. And it's like, that wasn't enough, I don't think, to be able to get those hints of personality and even intelligence. And if we're saying like those are, number 2 and number 3 for guys, that could be one of the many reasons why dating apps don't work very well compared to meeting in real life. Those are things that you're going to be able to tell very early on.
Exactly. Dating apps are cold approach, because cold approach is even worse because you don't know anything about them at all except for their appearance. And that's why it can be so hard for guys, even if they have game, to kind of get in the door, because you're coming from like ground zero as far as what you know about the person. So, but if you're able to get the socials, then you're able to kind of get a better grasp on if this person is even, worth, spending time with in the first place.
Right. Do you think that guys can really be like this particular, or do you think a lot of guys will settle?
I think a lot of guys will settle.
Yeah.
But there's a real downside to that. And that is one of 2 things will usually happen if you settle, is that you're either going to be in an unhealthy relationship and eventually a dead bedroom, or you're going to get divorced.
Both really bad situations.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that nowadays it's getting better, because when I was coming up, if you didn't get married, you were pretty much considered a social pariah. But the reality is that most of the guys that are kind of around my age that I know are not in great relationships at all, and they haven't had sex in years. And I even talked to a guy at the gym today about saying, well, when I get back in the dating market after my daughter grows up,
I've heard that too.
What's it going to be like?
They're just waiting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the years are going by, and I get it. Like, it's honorable to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Especially like with this one guy in mind, like it's not this toxic relationship. It's just that there's mutual attraction that isn't there anymore. And so they're doing it for the sake of his daughter
Right, just to keep the household together.
Yes, but she's only 10.
Oh,
So
they have some time.
Yeah, they have some time. And he's in his he's 49.
Yeah, I would argue, like, I understand those cases, and I've heard of cases like that, where it's not like the two partners are arguing. You know, it's not hugely toxic. But I would argue that they're lacking showing love, like what love should really look like between partners to their child.
Yes.
I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I totally agree. Well, I think actions speak louder than words.
Yes. Yeah, so they might not be fighting,
Yeah.
but like the lack of communication and the lack of physical touch,
Yeah.
you know, that's what your children are going to think is normal.
Exactly.
In that
So
case.
it's not great modeling as well. Mm-hmm. So it's just a real tough dilemma to be in.
That is.
But I think of guys in my kind of generation, even millennials a lot, because the pressure was there so much
Yeah.
that a lot of guys would settle and then, just end up divorced or in these, kind of poor relationships.
I think, what do you think? I'm going to speak my opinion, then I'll ask you if you
Okay.
agree. But I think, like, today's day and age, guys, especially in their 20s, like, it's highly important that when you're discovering these things are not aligning with the woman that you're with, I don't think you can shy away from ending the relationship. I mean, obviously there's steps, right? You can communicate and you try to work on the relationship, but if it's not working within a reasonable amount of time, you should end it. And I don't think men traditionally do that. I think that most oftentimes it's women that end the relationship.
Yes.
So
Nowadays, I think that's more true than ever.
Right.
Just because of the amount of options.
So it makes sense why that's leading to guys just settling.
Yeah.
And I understand the dating world is not great either, but the dating world in your 20s or 30s, I should say, especially for men, is going to be 100% better than when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
So do it now, and don't settle, because like the risks that you spoke to, divorce or dead bedrooms, don't think those are options that guys want to take. I think they'd rather be single.
Absolutely, they'd rather be single because then they at least have freedom and they have options for potentially meeting somebody else.
Right.
But unless you're not honorable and you'll cheat, then you're stuck in this. You're stuck.
Yeah.
And so those are really important decisions. And I think men on the whole, as well as women, are not liking what they see a lot of times. And so that's where, these kind of MGTOW movements are present. Now, I think MGTOW is a cope, because I think if guys had the ability to find a woman that checked all their boxes, they would be up for it.
Would you say that the personality box is where women are lacking the most in today's age?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I feel like even though obesity is on the increase, like I think the majority of young women are still doing a good job at being attractive to men.
Yeah.
They're not hitting that no category for a ton of guys. So and their intelligence is probably higher too than years ago, right? Because there's more women more than ever in colleges and getting really good jobs. And then the other things like having the value system, well, we could argue that is on the decline too with hookup culture.
Yes.
So that could be another issue, that guys are running into.
Absolutely. Well, if it gets to the point where women start having notches on their belt, then that, becomes problematic because of the fact that we've spoken about this 100 times too, about pair bonding, but really is that it's more layered than that. It's also about cheating.
Right.
So if a woman is used to having this diversity in her life, then what's the odds that all of a sudden she's with you and, 5 years down the line, she's going to say, I want to just be with you.
Yeah. So now comparing what men look for in a woman, when women are looking at a man, I've talked about this a lot. I think that when looking at appearance is still the first thing. I think that's just natural.
Yes.
But I think that women rely a little less heavily on appearance. So, if we had to put like a percentage on it, I think that it might be like 60% important.
Okay.
And then there's other things that are kind of spread out as far as what is left over
I would agree with
in
that.
importance. And when it comes to appearance, there's a lot of unsureness. So there's a huge maybe category. So a woman can look at you, you're either going to be a no to her, and there's really nothing, there's nothing that you can do if you're in that no category in appearance. And then there's a really large maybe category. And those are the guys that can do something. You know, he can show those other aspects. And if he happens to hit those benchmarks and those other boxes that she's looking for that are highly important to her, then he's probably going to end up a yes. But then there's also the yes category.
Yes.
You know, and she looks at a guy and she's like, yes, definitely. I would argue that that yes category of men can still mess it up down the line if he is lacking too much in any of the other boxes. I think that as far as the boxes go, I think that there can be like 20 to 50 boxes, I swear, for women. So it's really hard for me to say that there's like this, or that, you know, boxes. It's hard to itemize them into 5 or less. But I do think that one of the top ones after appearance is status. And we've talked about that a lot, that a woman can see a lot of different aspects of a man within his status. So even as far as like how financially successful he is, how good he is socially, how many friends he has. You know, he's not super awkward. He's somewhat an extrovert. You know, he's emotionally intelligent. I think there's just so many things that like status is almost like a fast pass to be able to determine some of those other things. And I think that when women, especially on dating apps, are trying to really select a guy quickly out of so many, they will, once they pass the appearance and it's either a yes or a maybe, they'll go down into the bio, and the next thing they're looking for are the indicators of status.
Yeah.
So the number one thing probably being the job, the guy's job, what he does for work.
Yeah, absolutely. And taken to the extreme, like our least watched video was, you know, about Harry and the royal family. Like, and that was all status based because like he bypassed the looks part because his status was so high comparatively to hers. Right.
And if a woman knows his status, like Harry's status, you know, Meghan knew that before ever really meeting him in person. I mean, I think she argued that, that she didn't know who he was.
She living under a rock?
Obviously, when the status comes before even really meeting the guy in person, that can lower that percentage of importance for appearance, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So it makes sense that that would be the first after looks for a woman. So continue.
And also they'll note that this is all to do with relationships. I mean, but I guess I'm not really even talking about SMV for women because the majority of women are looking for relationships.
Yeah. And the ones that are hooking up, I would argue that it's that looks and status that matter the most.
Yeah.
And everything else is after that is, you know, is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Especially women who, you know, try to hook up with celebrities and things like that. Like they don't care about their personality or how intelligent they are.
No.
You know, they just want to go down that route.
Yeah, and they want to have that experience.
Yes.
And they know it's going to be short term.
Exactly.
That's like Leonardo DiCaprio and all the women that he's dated. Like they know it's going to be short term. Exactly. But once they hit that certain age, you know, they wouldn't want to be with him, actually, because he's not looking for a relationship. They already know that. So those other indicators like would be values, you know. I think after status, it's sort of within status, but obviously financial stability, you know, is still very important.
Sure.
Because even women that are financially stable and independent themselves, like they want somebody that's equal or close to equal, or at least as good with his money, you know, so that like she's not going to be, you know, losing it all, that it'll be a very stable financial relationship.
Yes. Well, yeah, I would argue in most cases the woman is going to want the guy to make more money. And, you know, that's just...
I do think it depends on the generation, I think. Like, I think that Gen Z is probably getting a little bit better in their expectations as far as, women are going to college. Yeah, because I think that there's more women going to college because they know that they want to make a certain
But Gen Z is terrible
amount.
with relationships.
Well, they are for many reasons.
Yeah, but
But
don't you think that's one of them? Is that women have done really well for themselves, which great for women, but they've bypassed a lot of men, and so the men that they bypass, they don't find attractive because they're not on the same level.
If it's too different, I agree with you.
Okay.
Like if she has her doctorates or she's like a surgeon somewhere, like she's not going to be dating the car mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just too far off. But that has to do with status, I think, potentially more so than what he's actually bringing in. And so then I would say the next thing is probably value system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's looking similar to what guys are looking for. I don't know if like personality really is something that women punt at the very, very top.
Okay.
I mean, obviously they don't want a guy that's like controlling. That's probably the biggest thing that I hear.
Mm-hmm.
So just like how men say they don't want a woman that's super masculine.
Yeah.
She doesn't want somebody that's controlling.
Or she doesn't want a guy who's weak.
Or weak. That's true. Yeah, that's the other one that I hear often.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that makes sense. So you're saying that personality, which, kind of really makes sense when you say it out loud,
I know.
ends up being like number 4 versus guys, it's number 2.
I think so. And I don't know if that's just because of how like relationships are usually developed and women are usually like the leaders in how arguments go and how conversations go as far as like they get to kind of determine the mood. Mm-hmm. So like if she has a bad personality and a bad attitude, like that's going to be intertwined in daily life.
Yes.
Versus like I think that it's not the same for if he had a bad attitude. Like I think that she could take the lead on that and change it a bit. And it wouldn't be intertwined as much in their daily life.
Okay. Do you think that just because women, generally speaking, are better at relationships with other women and just have higher EQs in general?
Yeah,
they're able
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense. And they're able to kind of navigate those things better than a man would if he was in a situation.
And she would probably just talk to him. Mm-hmm. And like,
talk him off the ledge
right.
if he was, in a bad mood or whatever.
Right.
Where the guy might just say, I don't know.
He doesn't know what to do with her, which I understand. Like, that's just how it is.
Well, it's how, typically men have been socialized, is to be a doer and a fixer, not a listener. Mm-hmm. But that's an important skill to have, and women on the whole have that. But, then there's this whole other movement, and I'm wondering, how you feel about this, is that, especially within the red pill, is, never be vulnerable to a woman. And I throw that out if you have gotten to the place where you know that that woman is really invested in you.
Yes.
So if it's early on, then especially if most men are in kind of that maybe category, then I think you need to really kind of hold off on that. And then once you get to the point where you feel really comfortable and that she is a non-judgmental person, then you can really kind of open up. But here's the caveat to that, is that I think if you're really interested in this woman and you feel like she's got good potential, I think it's okay to open up to her, because that is a litmus test as far as how she's going to handle that.
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes. Like I actually, in all of my relationships, I would see it as problematic if we got to the point of dating for like 3 months, 4 months. We're in a relationship and there's been no vulnerability. And especially by like 6 months and a year, like, honestly, for me, like if he hasn't cried in front of me after a year, I'm seeing that as a relationship problem. Like, why is he feeling like he can't be vulnerable with me?
Exactly.
And I could tell you the exact times that each man has been vulnerable. Like, I remember each time. And it's never with any kind of negativity. It's like, okay, like we're there.
Yes.
He's opened up now.
Yeah.
You know, we're at that level.
Do you think you're an outlier there?
But
though?
I think I am an outlier because I've heard from plenty of men, absolutely, that they've said that it just completely changes the relationship the minute that they're vulnerable. And, you know, obviously that comes with them saying that they don't ever want to do that again. That's where the message comes from the red pill, is them speaking to experiences, I'm sure, that they've had themselves and that they've also heard from other men. That every time a man has cried or has been vulnerable in some way, that she sees that as weak. I just think that you're not with an emotionally intelligent woman or with the right woman that really truly cares for you for the right reasons. So I think that using that as a litmus test, like decently early, but not too early.
Yeah, it's not trauma dumping, but at the same time, it's you know, giving a little indication of that and seeing how she responds. So like, let's say you had a really stressful day at work and you're really frustrated because of that. And you are able to open up to her about, you know, maybe some things dynamically that aren't working in your workplace and how it's causing you a lot of distress. And if she's very supportive of that and listens and is just gives a lot good feedback, you know, because again, the women have higher IQs typically, so they can help navigate some of that stuff. That's a huge green flag. But if it's something where you could tell that she's annoyed by it, or there's any shift in the relationship after that,
or she kind of clams up and like becomes quiet.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a good sign.
Exactly. That should be a deal breaker. Because what's going to happen when things really go bad?
Yeah, and guys...
Is she going to be there for him?
No. You can't make the mistake of being like, oh, well, this is okay. I will just be that strong man then.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not human.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not healthy for you as an individual or for the relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and vulnerability creates connection. And so the more vulnerable you are with somebody, and obviously this takes time, you know, it's an onion. You peel it slowly. But the more that you make yourself vulnerable and she makes herself vulnerable towards you, then that creates a pair bond that is very strong. Because typically those aren't secrets or insecurities or however you'd want to look at it that you would just share with anyone. That's special towards that person. And that creates a good relationship.
Yeah, women do not have a problem with being vulnerable. But what do you think about women that do almost trauma dump very early on and they're the extreme of vulnerable very early on?
Well, yeah, that's a red flag.
I think so too.
Because that's something you have to earn.
Yeah, you're not the first one then. You're probably like the 20th.
Yeah. Well, it's like having sex with a guy on the first date.
Yeah.
Like, what's the odds that you're the first one that happened? So you have to look at that as a pattern versus saying that that's something that trust was earned.
Right.
And then she was able to open up to you about difficult things.
Because that's what feeds the connection. You know, like if she's opened up to so many people that easily, I think that impacts and it decreases the connection.
Yeah. Well, which brings me back to the whole social media that people tell themselves. So if you're looking for that validation and you're trauma dumping on Facebook, then how is that going to bear in the relationship?
Yeah, not good. Like there's just not that exclusivity to make it feel special.
Exactly. And that's ideally what a relationship is about, is people knowing each other's flaws and difficulties, but loving them anyways.
Yeah.
And not only loving them because of the fact that they opened up, but because that's what their particular brand of quirkiness is what makes them them. And you feel really loved and accepted when somebody knows your faults and flaws, but cares about you despite that. That it isn't dependent. Now, obviously, if it's a major flaw that impacts the relationship, that's different. But the reality of being human is that we all go through tough times. And so are you going to have a partner that's going to be there for you?
Yeah.
Or are they going to bail? when things get hard.
And you have to test it. Like, I really do think that you have to test it to some degree, or at least naturally let the test come about and pay attention to the results of it, and don't just bury your head in the sand. Because I think that there are a lot of women, I think majority of women would say, yes, I want a man that can be vulnerable with me.
Yes.
But a lot of them, again, like what we're saying, are not actually okay with handling it.
Yes. Looks are both like at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
We both agree on that, especially when it comes to online dating or anything online. And then for women, it's more kind of status and money, where guys, it's more personality and I would say common interests, even over IQ.
Yeah, I was going to say the next one for women would be common interests.
Yeah. But I think personality and IQ are really tied together as well.
Yes.
Because if someone's really yeah, I mean, you could be sweet and not very bright.
Yeah.
And you could also be bright and, have a terrible personality.
Yeah.
But I think that there is some overlap, and that's kind of what you're looking for.
And this is where, like, I haven't mentioned intelligence yet for as far as what women look for in a man, but that's still it's equally as important. That's where, like, I would say past the status, everything else is really, it's not a list anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just left to right check boxes of all these things.
Okay.
And so intelligence is definitely one of those. Mm-hmm. You want the man to be interesting, and that's kind of tied to status also. Yeah. Right? It's like so many of these things that are just across the board, left to right, are tied into status. Yeah. I think that's why it's number 2.
But don't you think it would also be interesting to you? So for example, if a guy's like into video games or D&D or something like that, that may be
the common interest part.
Yeah, the common interest part is as far as saying that either because there are women who are gamers out there or like to play board games, but it's something that if that's all the guy's about, like that may be problematic.
Yes. So I think that you have to share some common interests.
Yes.
But then you can each have some of your own.
Absolutely.
That, like, you just do on your own.
Yes.
And that can be respected. And I think that can be intriguing.
I think that should be encouraged as well.
I agree with you.
Because you don't want to give up your friendship group and the things that you love that are hobbies for a relationship. And I think what you were alluding to is you can bring that experience to that person's life, and they can learn something.
Yes. So that's the other thing about dating apps. I feel like a lot of women will get into, like, looking at the list of hobbies that guy is into, and, like, she's looking for very specific ones. Mm-hmm. And, if they don't, like, perfectly match, that's another reason to not swipe on him.
Yeah.
She's probably still going to swipe on him, honestly, if he reaches the status benchmark and the appearance benchmark.
Yeah.
But he's going to end up in the group of other guys, and then he might not be number 1 in her pick of the list at that point.
Exactly.
But I think that's where, like, they can make the mistake, the woman can make the mistake of eliminating him or putting him too far down the list too early on because she doesn't know his personality yet. She doesn't know his intelligence. So it's like he never even gets the date.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Exactly. And what if the guy is super funny and charismatic?
Exactly. And those hobbies don't matter as much. So like I think that they matter, but like more that personality of being open to hobbies, like I think that's key.
Yeah. Because the reality is that the amount of time that people actually engage in hobbies versus is very small compared to work or, to taking care of a household. Yeah. Or if you're into fitness, into that world. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's something where, but this could even come down to, because I've worked with a lot of couples that would fight about like TV shows, for example. And so it's something that I think you have to have an open mind to that as well. But I think if it's too far apart, then that could potentially be a deal breaker. I know it sounds silly, but if it's something where like all the woman will watch is rom-coms.
Well, that's part of like being disagreeable. I feel like that's almost a personality issue.
Yes.
Right? Like if she's just like, no, I don't want to watch anything other than this rom-coms.
Yeah, exactly. Or if a guy is, doing the same thing, that he only wants to watch action movies or something like that, where I think that it's just having that open mind to saying, okay, like, this does it for me, and having the ability to explain why it does it for you. And then the woman, if we're talking about her, that she says, okay, I'll give it a try and see if I like it or not. And then you can have a conversation afterwards, and maybe the person says, wow, that was really cool. Or they say, it just wasn't my thing, but that's okay. Then you just, you try other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But these are really important as far as, these different criteria other than just looks.
They are. And I think that's why women do really a pretty decent job at like spreading out the multiple things that are equally important. I know it's a lot. And there's so many reasons why like she'll just eliminate a guy, based on those boxes.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me that if a man is like lacking too much, like if he's a 0 or if he's a 1, if we're saying a 1 to 5 scale on each of these things, if he's a 1, he's probably not going to make it through on any of those things.
Yes.
Now, if he's like a 3 on all of them across the board, he is way more likely to be picked by her. Like she's going to have less of a problem with somebody that's just more equal across the board versus somebody that might be a 5 in one category but has that 1 in another category, because she sees it just as important across the board.
You know what? I think with guys, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's getting past the looks threshold, and then it's saying it can't be one of those things, can't be a 1 or a 2, because that's something that will end up or should be a deal breaker. So, for example, let's say she's somehow you get a 5 in looks, but her personality is a 1.
Yeah.
That would be short-term category.
Right. That's their subcategory.
Yes. But it wouldn't be something where you would pursue a relationship, because the reality is that it's not going to work out long-term then, most likely.
And that's where, say, the flip of that, if a man is seeing a woman that he's still attracted to, so it still is a yes category, but maybe she's just average, maybe she's a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
But she is like a 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 on all the other categories. Like that's still going to be a woman that he wants to probably marry.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, women should know that, because I think there's so many women out there nowadays that think that appearance is really everything to a man.
No.
And that's not true. Like if you're talking about short term, he'll hook up with you.
Yes.
But that is...
He'll hook up with you if you're not even that great.
So, that too. Yeah, so you shouldn't even feel that great about yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Just hooking up.
Yeah, because men and women are just very different that way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I would say that most men would rather date someone who's a 3 across the board rather than a 4 and a 1 and and one, or a 5 in one area and a 2 in the other. That type of thing. They want that consistency, and that will bring up somebody's attractiveness overall, as far as even the way you look at them.
Absolutely,
sure.
I think for sure for women, yeah, like they will actually see a man as more physically attractive in their eyes when they look at him, when he has those other things.
Yeah, I think it works for guys as well.
Yeah.
It's just getting through that barrier of, is she passable? But then if she's got this super personality and she's super sweet, caring, whatever, would be a great mom or is a great mom. If you have a child with her, or even if she's a single mom, it's something that could make the difference. Again, think about these things, and if go in the comments if you agree with us. Great. If you don't agree with us, I'd like to hear from that. Yeah,
let us know. I think that it was a very interesting conversation, so hopefully our audience enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe and watch the next video.